All right. Well, we're going to welcome tonight. Well, thanks first of all. Thanks for coming. Small but select audience there. The others may regret it. You never know. They might count themselves lucky. You know, we're about to find out. But I'd like to welcome Simon Strong along to Kelham Island Books and Music. Simon's been a customer of ours for many years. In fact, before we were Kelham Island Books and Music, he used to come to the Books on the Park and on Ecclesall Road. I don't think you ever went to the small shop, did you? No. That's where we started, and that's where Dave is now. But you've been coming pretty much every year for probably around about 10 years. So it's well welcome, and thanks for coming along. Now, it's only fairly recently that I've cottoned on that Simon's actually an author. I knew about all sorts of other things about him, most particularly his music. But we'll come to that in good time. Simon was born not far from here, in 1964, in Parsons Cross. His father was a rocket scientist. That's slightly unusual profession, you might say, for someone living on Parsons Cross. But there were lots of slightly unusual things about living on Parsons Cross, some of which might come out as well. I think, in fact, he went to Colley Comprehensive, which I think he describes in his biography as being like Hogwarts when comparing it with the school from Kes.
Yeah.
So the school from Kes was like Hogwarts.
Compared to Colley.
Compared to Colley.
The classrooms are made out of paper. Actually, they were, yeah.
Anyway, the tall and short of it was that he couldn't get out of Sheffield fast enough as a young fella, and he moved to Brighton in 1982, where he went specifically to work on artificial intelligence. Yes, it was around back then, and he's an experimental novelist. I say, call it what you like, but I mean, it's experimental novelist is what it is. It covers everything from science fiction to pornography, basically, and everything else in between. But he's also a filmmaker, a publisher. He's been a bookshop worker himself, and he set up Australia's first viable online bookstore. Obviously, he moved from Brighton. He went to Australia, and he's been. When did you first pitch down in Melbourne?
Not 96. I went to emigrate. Yeah, I went there in 92.
So he's been away quite a while, but his folks here and his dad's still in a home locally. And then therefore the family moved out of Parsons Cross and went to Stocksbridge.
Yeah, just after I left home, they moved somewhere nice. Yeah, thank you.
On the musical side, Simon was co-founded a psychedelic new wave band, the Pink Stainless Tail. We haven't got any of their material here, unfortunately. But his current band is called the Chronoplans, and we do have a vinyl copy of their album. It's fair to say that Simon's not over pleased with the 21st century. In fact, but he's got a lot to say about it, and I think he's going to have some interesting things for us tonight. Simon.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thanks. I'll just check that this is recording, because this is intended to be recording for broadcast on BBC television, so I'm not going to be allowed to say hell or damn or motherfucker, none of that shit. But nevertheless, I love being surrounded by books and CDs, which is why I have approximately 5 tons of books and CDs in my tiny little hovel in Melbourne. And I'm adding to it by printing hundreds of copies of my own books and sticking them under my bed. But I decided about a year ago that I was going to start propagating the stuff out into the 21st century to see what happened, because I'm an old cunt and I'm only going to live 10 years. What can possibly go wrong? So let's see. I'm going to read from my book that came out March the 15th, 2023. The Bastardizer Polishes a Turd. It's on Cripplegate Books of London. The chief editor is Stuart Home, the fantastic novelist and art, basically the only human being who's visible from space, who's been a mentor to me. So if anything goes pear-shaped, it's his fault, not mine. And his new novel, Art School Orgy, makes my stuff look like the Reader's Digest in terms of how thin the books are and how there's... it's so fucking disgusting, that book. It really made my eyes water. And I'm a pornographer. Anyway, I'm going to be reading tonight from The Bastardizer Polishes a Turd, and I might burst into song between chapters. You don't know what's going to happen. It's a small, intimate gathering, but just remember, if you're playing in front of 20,000 people, you spread very thin. If you're playing in front of 3 people, please don't have an aneurysm, right? Okay, Chapter 7, The Banality of Evil. It was then that my piece chose to accidentally discharge. The shot went straight into the cassette player over the bar. Fragments of plastic shrapnel shot out all over the place, and the tape spooled itself out all over the floor like the deck was spewing out lungfuls of blood or entrails or something else. Obviously, the tune came to an abrupt end at this point. An astonished-looking guy with dreadlocks looked up at me like he was astonished. "What the fuck?" he went. I improvised and I went into my customary damage limitation routine. 1. That cassette constitutes an unlawful reproduction of a copyright work. 2. That you are committing a criminal offence by publicly disseminating a copyright work without permission and without payment of royalties and associated fees. 3. This venue is not licensed by the relevant authority for public performances. 4. Or dancing, if that's what it actually was. Or 5. Music, for that matter, either. 6. Say your prayers, motherfucker! I punched the cunt in the gut and he doubled up, so I kicked him in the teeth while he was still down there. He keeled over backwards. Ah! I grabbed his greasy dreads and I spun him around on the beery ground. He was kneeling in front of me like an exotic fruit. Like this. Right. It was nearly in front of me on the exotic ground like an exotic fruit I intended to do a 6-pack on. The onlookers in the bar moved even further back, clutching at a counterpiece. A terrified old geezer in a postman's uniform suddenly puked into his mailbag with the fear or the beer or both. I let off a round in his general direction. The sack burst in an explosion of confetti and vomit, spattering the guys on either side of him. They recoiled in disgust, like the gun in my fist had. It was only then that I realised that I didn't know exactly what order you were meant to do the 6-pack business in. Should I work at one side, foot, kneecap, elbow? Start doing pairs on either side, but from the top or downwards? Were elbows even involved? I didn't know, it was fucking complex. I should have thought it through beforehand. Anyway, it was too late now, so I just shot him in the right foot first. His expensive trainer was instantly depreciated, as opposed to being instantly deprecated, which it was at the same time. It was a fucking shithouse apology for a shoe. Anyway, at first he screamed, and then he started on the customary gibbering and howling. When I shot him in the other foot, great gobbets of blood and bone fragments splodged up onto the stripper who was over by the bar, and I watched transfixed as her fingers moved downwards to remove a bloody chunk from her nether regions. The chunk was discarded, and she tried to wipe off the blood and gunk off herself. She only ended up spreading it around and inadvertently arousing herself in the process. A finger slipped into the depths of her feminine mystery. I didn't see that coming. Obviously, she was one of those women who are sexually aroused by extreme gratuitous violence. This could be a marriage made in heaven. They didn't grow on trees, you know. Suddenly, I was distracted as a crazy fuckwit leapt over the bar, brandishing a cricket bat like some kind of berserker. I let off another round subconsciously, and the cricket bat exploded in a bunch of willowy splinters, erupting in all directions, and a couple of especially evil ones landed in my assailant's eyeballs. Aye! He went like a racist caricature in a 1970s war comic. I also noticed that some of the splinters were sticking in his arse. I was amazed at the contortions he must have performed to make this particular thing possible, and how it might have gone unmentioned in the narrative up until this point. Just then, the stripper grunted. She was still digitally remasturbating as she leaned back on the bar. With her spur hand, she manipulated the pert antenna of her starboard hemisphere. Eyes closed, lips pouted, standard operational procedure as her climax impended. The guy I was 6-packing had fainted meanwhile. I realised that I was still holding him up by his ridiculous hairstyle. The place had pretty much emptied by now, obviously, except for him and the guy who was clutching his eyes and trying, like a little girl, to cry miserably. But he was failing because of his terrible agony, and it struck me as ironic that it was his colleague that I'd previously regaled with the Oedipal pejorative. I felt a tug at my sleeve and I spun around. It was the stripper again. "We've got to get out of this place," she went, quoting Cynthia Weil appositely. "Good idea," I heard myself go. She pulled me to the door and posed at the coat rack to pull on a see-through PVC raincoat and pick up her tankard of takings. I held the door open for her chivalrously, and the daylight burst in on her and her amazing arse. There was a lime green Vespa directly outside the pub. She hitched up her Mac and threw her leg over. "Get on!" she barked, pulling some wiry shit from under the handlebars and fiddling with it. I got on behind her, making sure I straddled the scooter manfully, because it all looked a bit effeminate to me. I heard a bellow from the pub, the doors flew open again. Although I should have been focusing on matters closer at hand, I noticed that the pub was called the Cock in Hand. Meanwhile, the bloke with the ice thing blumbered outwards. He screamed, the bright sunlight assailing his shredded seeing bulbs, and off we sped. Quite slowly, on account of this thing being powered by a motor less powerful than a lot of spin dryers have. But it was still quick enough to outrun a blinded cunt anyway. Anyway, as the poor geezer lunged at us, he fell under a street-sweeping van that had been bearing down, washing the curbstones. Fucking thing was loud enough, and I'd always thought that blind people were meant to have better hearing to make up for it. That obviously wasn't the case here. The last we saw in the rear view mirrors, he was vanishing, being sucked feet first into the spinning brushes. Well, it just wasn't his day. Okay. That's the end of that chapter. Look, that's the end of that chapter. It says so. Right. Just give me a minute, because that was a bit tiring. I'll be right with you. You can also just gather your thoughts and reflect on what you've just heard. Whether you wanted to hear it, and whether you want to hear anything like that ever again in the future.
Will there be a test at the end?
There will be. Look, here are the questions. No, that's the bibliography. There is a quiz at the end. It's a certificate that you get if you actually read them, if you make it through the whole book. Yes, so it's a good question. Thank you. Exactly. Now, a moment of reflection. This next chapter is called the 22nd of May, 1965. Given their contemporaneous origins and similar demographic penetration, it comes as no surprise that the Beatles have been referenced in Doctor Who more often than any other popular cultural manifestation. Both of these British icons have spawned worldwide industries of merchandise and analysis. Both tropes were instrumental in bringing scholarship of popular culture into academic institutions in a transparent bid to divert efforts from real-world social phenomena. The first documented intersection of the two tropes occurred in the first episode of The Chase, broadcast on the 22nd of May 1965 and starring William Hartnell as the first Doctor, who is known to hardline Whovian fans as One. Viewing from the year 1996, a clip of the Beatles singing Ticket to Ride from the 15th of April 1965 episode of Top of the Pops is seen on the time-space visualizer. The Doctor's assistant Vicky, who is apparently from the 25th century, refers to it as classical music, and she presently refers to a museum in Liverpool dedicated to the Beatles in her time. In reality, so-called, the Beatles Museum, the first Beatles Museum, opened in Liverpool in 1981. She wasn't far off. The programme's producer's original idea had been to have a brief cameo by the actual group, who would be made up to appear elderly, performing at a 1996 Beatles theme park. But fortunately, the Beatles manager Brian Epstein vetoed this completely fucking stupid idea, and this decision lends retrospective verisimilitude to the show, since the band had broken up by 1970 anyway, and John Lennon had been murdered by 1980, which makes the idea of the postulated performance quite unlikely. The footage that was used for the broadcast is the only known surviving footage of the Beatles on Top of the Pops, and the original tapes of their appearances have been wiped alongside many episodes of Doctor Who. Given the clip's miraculous survival, it's ironic that licensing restrictions now require the excision of this very clip from most retail versions of the show. Thank you. Don't all applaud at once, eh? Fucking hell. Okay. It's not long to go, don't worry about it. I'm now going to read a chapter called Team Building Exercise, which is about artificial intelligence. And this is what I think about it. Team Building Exercise! The old smut peddler was a big computer whiz in the 1970s. You couldn't call him a hacker since he'd stopped being a hacker before the term was coined. As a childhood maths prodigy, an all-county Scrabble champion, he had easily landed a prime assignment one day back in the 60s and 70s when his dad got a call from a top boffin about a secret research program where he could put his talents to the public good and he could avoid the tedium of going to university just to have it rubber stamp his already mad skills. As it happened, the unit was housed in 3 tar paper shacks in a secret shanty town in the paddock adjoining a prestigious university. This was the Paleolithic era of computing when the machines were mainframes the size of big rooms. There were interconnected steel cabinets painted duck egg blue or institutional grey, sometimes khaki if they were ex-MOD. Sometimes the wind would rip through the tar paper walls of the machine shack, and if the rain got in, there would be a sudden shower of orange sparks, all the lights would go out, and everything would be lost. You'd lose all your code, because we didn't have any UPSs back in those days. That stands for uninterruptible power supply. Inspired by Joseph Weizenbaum's program called ELIZA, which simulated non-directive psychotherapy, the programmers were working on computer modelling of what they used to call mental illnesses. The unit had to be top secret and concealed from the intentions of pharmaceutical multinational companies who had a vested interest in suppressing their research to preserve their markets. But despite the precautions of the unit, they were subverted at every turn. Quickly, the hacker found celebrity with his razor-sharp insights into the alternative mindsets that were being monetised as mental illnesses. And after his first briefing, he'd been told to familiarise himself with the equipment, but instead had gone away and churned out a catatonia simulator written in the new and exotic dialect of BASIC. That stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. Incidentally, that's not in the book, that's just a bit of bonus knowledge. Later, he surpassed himself and earned the esteem of his college with a simple function that could be added to any program to mimic the effects of coprolalia, which was later codified as Tourette syndrome. This function worked by piping all the standard outputs through a filter, which periodically added extra expletives or apparently random outbursts to sometimes crash the machine. Things started to go pear-shaped when some members of the team started experimenting with drugs to better understand the altered states that they were trying to model. The effects of marijuana could be approximated by stealing machine cycles to run unnecessarily high-demand routines, which would do nothing but garble the output in occasionally entertaining ways. So he'd been fired without ceremony after a unit exercise in the wilds of Dartmoor. 6 colleagues and his immediate superior had been packed into a transit van, and they were sitting in the car park in the belting rain when he suddenly jumped out and started running in circles around it, waving a convenient hatchet over his head, screaming, "I know exactly what I'm doing!" He was stark naked at the time, but to be fair, everybody else was, and they were all tripping their tits off. It seemed funny at that particular time, but in hindsight, it was a bit embarrassing. And the next time he showed up for work, all the huts had been torn down. There was only dead brown grass to tell him that he'd found the right place. It was too late, and it was now the wrong place. He didn't know what to do, so he signed on the dole, spent a couple of weeks pissing around, reading SF anthologies in bookshops. Soon enough, he ran into somebody down a pub who worked in a bookshop, and he offered him a job there. So he went on and took it. Right, so that's a bit of narrative complexity going in there, a bit of character building, you understand. I'm only going to read a couple more chapters. Shall I sing a tune to give everybody a bit of a break?
Go on, then.
This is all a bit intense. Oh, okay, just give me a moment. Normally, I sing tunes backed by this really rocking pub and dub outfit. Although this particular tune has only got a very sort of low-key acoustic guitar, sort of, and then the acoustic guitar sort of goes like, what does it go like? It goes like ding 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 ding, and just fucking nothing like that. Sorry, just ignore what I just said. I'll just sing it. Okay. Oh, won't you make a daisy chain? Thread this blossom round your throat. I don't think it's going to rain. You might as well take off your coat. It seems a shame to pick the flowers when they look so pretty there. I could sit and watch for hours, the petals dancing through your hair. Oh, won't you make a daisy chain? Although the petals wilt and die, come the dawn they'll bloom again. Let's go to your place and get high. Alright, that's that tune. That's the shortest tune on the album. It's only 45 seconds long, even with the instrumental intro. Alright. Now, does anybody like reggae music? I like reggae music. Alright. Jar music. Yeah. Anyway. What happened in May 1973? The world started. The universe started. Everything else before that was an illusion. May 1973. Although preceded by avant-garde and comedic precedents, modern remixing, a recombination of existing musical components to create a new version, is widely considered to have its roots in the dancehall culture of late 60s, early 70s Jamaica. The fluid evolution of local music that had morphed from ska to rocksteady to reggae was embraced by local music producers who deconstructed tracks into versions suitable for toasting. The local practice of DJs singing or chanting over the top of records at sound system parties, not putting bread in under a grill, obviously. Innovative, that's not in the book either. I'm just elaborating. Innovative producers and engineers like King Tubby and Lee Scratch Perry popularised stripped-down instrumental mixers known as versions of reggae tunes. And at first, they simply dropped off the vocal tracks, but soon more sophisticated effects were created, dropping individual tracks in and out of the mix, isolating repeating hooks, adding various effects like echo, reverberation, and delay. But in May 1973, Lee Scratch Perry, who is undoubtedly the greatest genius of recording of the ever, he remade Leo Graham's News Splash as Station Underground News. And he dropped in a taped sample of the Chi-Lites, For God's Sake, Give More Power to the People, from 1971. This was the earliest known instance of a beat match sample from a different song being used in a recording. By the mid-1970s, dub culture had arrived in the Bronx via Caribbean immigrants such as the Jamaican DJ Kool Herc and Barbados-born Grandmaster Flash. Sound systems were translated into block parties and DJs played soul and funk records in place of reggae. Toasting became rapping and substituted jive talk for patois. In Jamaica, DJs had access to studios for remixing, but in the NYC it had to be done on the fly because the percussive breaks in funk and soul records were generally short. Herc and other DJs used two turntables to extend the breaks. Cutting, which was alternating between duplicate copies of the same record. Scratching, manipulating manually, moving the vinyl record between the turntable needle. And these all became part of the emerging culture known as hip-hop. Turntablist techniques, beat matching and all that, developed along with the breaks. And the new medium gave voice to the disenfranchised voice of the low socio-economic demographics, and the culture reflected the political realities of their lives. Caribbean families had settled in the UK since the Windrush stopped in 1948, but the music really started permeating working class areas in the early 60s and found an audience amongst mods and subsequently skinheads and punks. By the 80s, reggae had morphed into jungle, which spawned dubstep, and its cultural impact was that by the 21st century, Caribbean patois was the lingua franca of use of all epidermal patinas. The rapid developments in Jamaican music were arguably attributable to the absence of restrictive legislation. Overseas, white-owned corporate labels had made a racist practice of ignoring local artists, and local record labels had always been liberal when it came to appropriation, themselves lacking the funds or the framework for any kind of litigation. Covers, remakes and versions of popular songs paid no heed to European-derived notions of property, since musical recordings were not copyrightable. Licensing and disputes of ownership usually concern the absence of royalties rather than licensing, and they were not settled in court, but rather in the street with ratchets or firearms or fists. Given the lawlessness of the island, they all had higher priorities than intellectual property and oxymorons like that. And the sufferers' daily struggles gave them profound insight into spurious constructs like this. It wasn't until 1993 that Jamaica's Copyright Act came into effect, and it wasn't until 1996 when the Jamaica Music Society, which was otherwise known as the Jams, was actually instituted. So there you go.
I didn't know Grandmaster Flash was in for Caribbean origin. I didn't realise Grandmaster Flash.
Yes.
Oh, I see that, eh?
Absolutely. Does anybody want some like gratuitous stupid? Oh, there's a picture here of a bloke with his cock out dancing around a transit van. Someone. That's in the wrong chapter, actually. The guy that did the illustrations was off his noodle. And a lot of my pals are off the noodles, actually. It's funny that. Does anybody want one more last chapter?
Go on.
Would you like a really disgusting, like, violent chapter, which is... Well, yes, what you're going to get anyway. Okay. Quiet, please! Came an annoyed bellow from the authoritarian librarian, who must have been hiding out the back now. I realised the silencer had failed and the shot had rung out like a bang or a gunshot. I looked down at the piece in my hand and I noticed that I'd pissed myself. What the fuck was it with all the pissing and the shitting going on? The piss seemed to be a bit bloodshot, and I noticed that a cock and the balls lying on the ground by the decapitated old writer. I wondered if that was a misprint and it should say decapitated. Fucking hell, I went. I was truly astonished. He was so hardcore on the porn thing that he kept a spare cock and balls in his cranial cavity. Not even a bastardizer does that as far as I know. Not even I do that as far as I know. Who does that? Does anybody keep a spare cock and balls in a cranial cavity? I always ask this question when I do a reading. No, okay. Actually, last reading I did, this girl at the back actually admitted that she did. Which is confusing, but there were a lot of young kids there, and who knows what they do, I don't know. The old bastard sat up suddenly and he staggered to his feet. He went. Obviously, he was confused. What exactly the fuck is happening? I went. I inquired this because I was obviously hallucinating quite a bit. I couldn't work out how much of it. I figured that some cunt must have spiked me. Fuck me, the time machine worked, explained a new novelist. It turned out that this was the old writer, but from another timeline where he had actually perfected his experiments. Which one? Who knows? Pick a number. The bastard either was impressed, to say the least, and a bit disconcerted. You should have seen that coming, mate, added the new novelist. Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation, the MWI, proves that there must be at least one future where his ideas would prove viable. And I would come back and do this. You know that it was inevitable. The bastardizer levelled his piece with a shaking hand against the ostensible phantom, but then he lowered it again. What? Wasn't his Latter-day Eels, that band? They had some nice tunes. Was it Friendly Ghost? That was a good one. It wasn't a hit, though. Although Everett's ideas are patent nonsense in this continuum, I am from one where they proved viable. What the fuck are you talking about, you maniac? What ideas? What continuum? Not viable? You should know. You fucking invented a fucking chrono funnel, you fucking bastard. The writer cackled maniacally for a moment. Woo! 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 It was nothing like that, and that was longer than a moment. I'm sorry about that. Yes! Sorry. Yeah. Yes, I forgot you didn't know. Didn't know what? You shot the wrong bloke. That guy was just a bum. He never invented nothing. He pissed his life away. He wrote dirty books and it sent him insane. You're in the wrong fucking continuum. I fucking invented a fucking chrono funnel and you're a fuckwit. That's what I fucking said, you shitheel. I went and I raised my piece again. I steadied my aim momentarily as I delusively believed that I had been trained to do. The new novelist cunt reached behind himself, lining quick, and pulled out a terrifying black turd as hard as a rock, and he flung it at the bastardizer unexpectedly again. It was more like a paperweight than a shit this time, and it was terrifying to conceive that a human anus might have been capable of such feces, but I'm not shitting you. The bastardizer was doing that. That's what I said in the first place. Anyway, the heavy stool smacked the amateur assassin square between the eyes just as he pulled the trigger. The shot ricocheted off the nearby bookshelf with an extremely loud noise. Ironically, it was the 346.730 shelf. The deflected shot then proceeded to shatter the spinning ceiling fan, which exploded in several deadly shards, like fucking magic. It was a miracle nobody was killed. Mind you, the bastardizer cock and balls kept a nasty piece of shrapnel which shredded them nastily. It all happened in slow motion if you're an insect. My cock and balls, I whinged. I was going to use those. Why? Why? You have presumed to meddle with world change. Poor spider, he explicated. Caught in the wheel of futility. You have linked my name with the inevitable. You are an incompetent murderer. He rested one bony hand on his hip. It was entirely untheatrical. And now I vent my terrible fury. Terrible fury, what? As last words went, this was even worse than the deadbeat novelists had been. But despite that, the bastardizer decided that without his cock and balls, life wasn't worth living, even though he hadn't used them in the entire book. So he died. The new novelist didn't notice, and he didn't give a shit either way anyway. He considered continuing his complete fucking gibberish. Don't believe all that PR bullshit on my TV show. In truth, I am an evil bastard. If it pleased me, I would kill everyone everywhere, he went on, including all the readers of this book, all the potential readers of this book, every fucker who ever fucks with me, ever. Behold, I will make the world into any image of a smoking turd. Not even a smoking turd, just a picture of a smoking turd. Now I choose to grow weary of all you cunts, and thus I exit this tome as suddenly as I came into it, and I continue my mission to impregnate every life form in the universe with my incredible seed. All right, and all the ones on the International Space Station too, and a moon base that won't even be built now. But anyway, I'll also get to kill every mortal on the age of majority. It'll be like Logan's Run. I'll take my shirt off. It'll be fantastic. Whoa! Probably just as well that the cops showed up at that point. Okay, that's the end. That's not the end of the book, but that's the end of the reading.
Thanks a lot, Simon.
Thank you all.
I'm going to have a little bit of time. We've got 15 or so minutes.
15 minutes? Oh, okay. I can do another song.
You can do another. You go on.
I'll do my theme song. I'll do my theme song.
You're doing the Sheffield Grind.
Oh, that's not my theme song. That's my
There is a version of the Sheffield Grind. They're on the Chronoplans.
I could do it if you can all sing along. We could have a sing song. I could do that. I'll do one.
Do your theme.
I'll do the theme tune, the Experimental Novelist. This we put out as a single, but unfortunately I was pissed when I ordered the vinyl, and it was cut at 33 RPM, and so the 7-inch single, it's only actually got that much music on it. Real fucking shit, because I could have put the whole 7-minute dub version on one side and another tune on the other side, but as it is, it's split with fucking £500 or something. Fuck. Anyway, okay. This is a tune I wrote because our guitar player Aaron Goldberg, who is a legend and one of the greatest guitar innovators I've ever met, hates Nick Cave, and I'm always saying, go easy on the bloke, he's had a rough life. I mean, fucking hell, who'd want to be Nick Cave? Jesus Christ. But no, he still lays into him on Facebook every opportunity he gets, and he's sad. But anyway, I thought I'd take the piss out of him as well, just to ingratiate myself with Aaron, because he's a top bloke. So I wrote this song, and it hasn't got Aaron's guitar on it, it hasn't got Steph's bass, it hasn't got Zunka's drums. The Plans are fucking top group, but I'm going to sing the song without them now, because they're not here. Okay, how does it go? As I type these lonely sheets, I'm keenly aware that no one reads me. In the bookshops all around the world, the pretty girls that sell the books don't need me. Where yesterday the horny dudes were on the tram with 50 shades of grey, and nowadays the little bastards can't be bothered to put their phones away. As I read the book reviews, I realise that it all makes me want to spew. All I want to read is books that blow my mind like those what I write usually do. But all the novels that I published were as distant to you as the stars. You didn't want to read them. Well, I didn't want to read yours. Oh, I might be a little bit drunk right now, but not quite half as much as I could be. Oh, pretty soon I'll be so hammered, little kids will gather round and point at me. Still, I'll get my mates together and go and make a rock and roll band. Oh, everyone will love it. It won't be very hard to understand. I'll jump around, I'll shout out things that sound both erudite and comical, and the profits from the merchandise alone are astronomical. But if I keel over halfway through it, look away and don't blame me, 'cause I'm the experimental novelist. Just you wait and see. Yeah, rock on anyone. Peace, love, solidarity, and fucking rock and roll.
Oh, thanks a lot, sorry. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, well, I said I've got
Questions and answers
questions. I'm going to, if that's all right, I'm going to just start doing a bit of preparation on the doors and stuff like that. I can, because we're such a multitudinous gathering, I'll be able to hear what you're saying, and if I need to chip in or something, I will chip in. Is that all right?
Are there any questions?
So,
Are there any questions for me about what you've just seen? What you've or heard? Or smelt? No!
Are you going to be posting this on a website or something?
Yes.
Yeah?
Would you like me to turn the camera off?
What's that?
Would you like me to turn the camera off?
Oh no.
No, the questions are the best thing. It's your chance, but nobody can see your faces, it's just me. It's all about me. I can't. No, nobody can see you. Nobody.
No.
There's nothing attributable. Nobody can litigate anything, man. It'll never stand up in court. You're perfectly safe here.
What?
You're perfectly safe. Man. It is nothing to be afraid of.
Well, that's one of the most scariest things anybody's ever said to me.
The only thing to fear is fear itself. And knives and spiders, heights, snakes, aeroplanes, poison, nuclear war, diseases, women, fire, dangerous things. Yeah.
It struck me that the songs that you did without the band, and especially when you hadn't mentioned the band, they had a sort of I don't know, like a sort of music hall. I can imagine them being on the, what was it called? There was a program.
The good old days.
The good old days. That's it.
Yeah. I was a big fan of the good old days.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I really like that one that the man I love sits there on the balcony. You know that one?
Oh yeah. I can do, if anybody wants me to do, let's all go down the Strand and have a banana, I can do that. Or indeed, I can do I like bananas because we have no bones, and no, they have no bones, that's a different tune. I can do, in fact, any number of tunes about bananas. So obviously the music hall had a profound effect on me.
Oh yeah.
And bananas. I doubt the bananas had an effect. I don't know if the music hall had any effect on bananas. Probably did, and popularised them and made them more prominent in society.
Yeah, it's sort of, it was a death knell for the straight banana, for sure, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
I've never seen a straight banana.
No.
And that's actually a very tautological tune. I love tautologies.
Yeah.
And contradictions. Yeah, I don't know which I like better. What's better, a tautology? Let's have a show of hands. There's an odd number of people here, so who likes tautologies better than contradictions?
I like to be sure about things.
Right. Who likes contradictions better than tautologies?
I'm good on both of them. Depends what mood I'm in. Depends if the sun's shining, sometimes.
Yeah, I fucking love paradoxes. I think there aren't enough paradoxes in the world. And,
But what's one of the things I was thinking is, I noticed that you basically, people who write any form of alternative, literal artists of any alternative form, whether they're outside or avant-garde or left, whatever people call it, it's quite often that they often get their output suppressed by by the establishment in one form or another. You kind of did it slightly differently in that you suppressed your own.
Oh yeah.
I mean, perhaps you can say a few words about that. I mean, this was now you're coming out of the closet.
Well,
now.
Because 66 Mind Fuck 99, which might be published at some future point, it already exists as a book. But that I wrote in the 1990s, and it was published, and I published in 2005 a limited edition of 50 copies, all commas. To celebrate 10 years of writing it, and I hid them all under my bed, and to save Babylon the effort of banning it, and because it's absolutely fucking filthy. I mean, you think that was bad? I mean, 66 Mind Fuck 99 it's not violent, but instead of this is about violence, but 66 Mind Fuck 99 was about what sex when in the past when people used to have sex, and that's what that was about. Because and so I suppressed that, and then to celebrate 20 years since me suppressing it, I decided to publish it openly. And but I figure that in the Soviet Union they didn't have any censorship. They just, if they didn't like something, they just didn't make it in the first place or produce it in the first place. And I thought that was a commendable thing. But I decided to have it both ways and to produce the thing and also not disseminate it. So there are still 50 copies of the first edition under my bed, which I'm waiting to skyrocket in value after I win the Nobel Prize. And might have a long wait. Who knows? We don't know. Nobody knows anything about except for fucking Stephen Hawking, and fuck him. So yes, I suppressed all my books for a long time. because I had a terrible experience with my first novel, A259 Multiplex Bomb Outrage in 1995, which became a bestseller in post-Soviet Russia, and in translation, obviously. Yes, I'm very sorry about that book, and I decided it would be safer just like not to allow any of my books to actually hit the market. But like I say, I'm 60 this year, and I'm probably going to die before anybody can assassinate me. So, so everything's good. Yeah, rock and roll. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's too much fucking like spreading stuff around and disseminating stuff going on. Let's have more. As far as I know, thousands of people are writing books and not telling anybody about them. And yeah, I like that idea. Like the bloke that did, what was it, in the realms of the unreal. You know that film In the Realms of the Unreal, about the bloke that had that did all the pictures and wrote the book, and then died, and they only found out after he died. That's a fucking good film. But he was weird guy. But or like 28 Rousseau or Kurt Schwitters or any of these, or Howard Finster. I love those outsider artists. I want to be more like them than like Salman Rushdie, for instance. Yeah, so I was an outsider artist. Yeah, but not writing novels rather than doing crazy paintings.
How about Howard Finster?
Howard Finster's a fucking genius.
Yeah.
And fuck David Byrne and Michael Stark for making him famous. Yeah. Although, by all accounts, I tell you what, that video for Radio Free Europe, the original video for Radio Free Europe, which is in his bicycle garden, that's one of my favourite bits of film ever recorded. And at the end you see Howard Finster and he's given this little fucking singing bells in it. Fucking brilliant. Yeah. But, yeah, so those are my heroes, not William Burroughs or David Cronenberg. I'd like to be completely unknown. But by the same token, I'd also like to win the Nobel Prize because I fucking love contradictions and paradoxes.
Anything else, guys? It is all guys, so I can say that without contradiction.
Well, you never know nowadays.
Well, that's true.
You
That's
just
true.
don't know.
Yeah,
Everybody could be there.
it could be. We could all be these. Yes, I didn't check. It's true enough.
Yeah.
We'll prompt it.
It's a future. It's a century.
Yeah, you go, well, you see, it's ground you have to tread very carefully on one way.
Yeah.
So thankfully
It's good. It makes things more interesting. I totally approve of it. Anything that makes everything more confusing is gotta be good. If that's not obvious from my book.
Well, anyway.
Thank you, everybody.
No,
well done for coming.
Thanks for doing that. I know it was, as I say, it was a bit of a rushed organisational job, but
Thank you.
At least we got three people. I got to clean my floor under the table that hasn't been cleaned since before COVID. So you know, there's added bonuses to the, as well as being a significant cultural event for Kelham Island Books and Music. I get to clean bits that have needed it. And I wouldn't have happened if Simon hadn't come along. So I know, but
and there's heaps of cheese.
There's heaps of cheese. Get yourself another drink. We don't have to, we don't have to touch. I have to be somewhere at 9:15. But apart from that, please, feel free to mosey around, chat amongst yourselves, ask any questions, have a look at the books, the merchandise,
Maybe
have a look at
some therapy.
that's right.
Samaritans.
Yeah, I was going to add something along those lines, but you've beat me to it. So there we go. Well, thanks.
Thank you so much,
no,
David.
thanks a lot. No, it's a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Been a pleasure.
What a legend. This is
It's a pleasure.
one off the bucket list. Thank you.
The bucket list. Yeah.
Okay, I'll turn off the recording
Yeah.
now and I'll send it to Avia. All right.